Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll give it just a minute as people trickle in and start to join our room. Great. Maybe we'll do introductions where people are still joining. Thank you again so much for joining us today. Great to see you all for joining us to learn more about the Master of Advanced Management program, but really about our MAM application. So Matt and I are excited to jump into each component of our application, give you some tips along the way in time for our round one application deadline next month, which is coming up. So some quick intros. My name is Kate Navarro. I'm the Director of Admissions for our Management Master's program, the MAM program being one of them. And with me today, I'm here with my colleague, Matt.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Lassance. I'm the Assistant Director for Admissions. Excited to be here and talk a little bit more about the application for the Master of Advanced Management.
Great. And like I said, I would definitely recommend watching some of our previous webinars to learn more about the MAM program in general and some of our details. Today, Matt and I are really going to be focusing specifically on the application itself. So if you go to that nice little box up there, scan that, you'll be able to go to our website, and then you'll be able to see some of our previously recorded webinars. With that, I'll hand it over to Matt to get things kicked off before we get started.
Thanks. So let's talk quickly on sort of the two pathways that can lead you to the MAM program here at Yale. So pathway number one, your standard pathway. That is, you've either completed or are in the process of completing your MBA program or MBA degree, and you would apply for the Yale MAM program standalone. You'd fill out our application. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. If admitted, you'd join us here at Yale and be an MAM student. And one of our other pathways is the M2M pathway. So through this pathway, which we have with two schools at the moment, UBC and HEC Paris, you would actually apply for the program before even starting your MBA. So essentially, you would know what the next 2 years of your life are going to look like. You'd be able to know, I'm going to go and get my MBA started at one of those two schools, and then join us here at Yale. And you'd fill out both applications, as I mentioned, before starting your MBA program. Both of these lead to the Yale MAM program. It's just to give you a little bit of an idea of, where our students might be coming from or the pathway they may have taken, as you might see a few of both if you have the opportunity to join the program. What does our timeline look like? So round one, the deadline for round one is January 8th, 2025, and round one is exclusively open to GNAM or Global Network School students. Round two, which has a deadline of February 19th, and round three, April 9th, are open to students from any MBA school across the globe. I know one of the big questions for this is always, what are the advantages of applying earlier? Are there advantages to applying in round one versus round three or two? And really, the key advantage that you get from applying in an earlier round is earlier what your decision is. You'll know, okay, I was admitted to the program and now I need to start thinking about my visa. I need to start thinking about housing. How am I going to get to Yale? All of those sorts of things, and start planning even, am I going to take time away from my job or am I going to do something else? All of those sorts of planning steps, you're able to get a jump start on those and really get ahead of them. I do want to also mention, though, because I think it's important, we've had students apply at 11:59 p.m. Round three and be admitted to the program, still come here. And I think that's an important key to note is even if you apply in round three, there's opportunities. We have space in each round. We have scholarship money for students in each round. And I don't want to discourage anybody from applying in round three versus round two or round two versus round one. Apply when your application is at its best. That's the best time to apply. So some of the things we're going to talk about, just to give you a little bit of a rundown, we're going to talk about your transcripts, test scores, resume, recommendation letters, video questions, essays, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we're looking for in these. We try to take a holistic approach and really look at each piece of your application and weigh it as its own. We don't want to overvalue one component of it because we understand, test scores are just one example of who you are. Your resume is one example of who you are. Your video questions. Each piece is going to help kind of put together this puzzle to really allow us to see the best version of you via application. And then potentially in an interview, get to talk even a little bit further and learn more about you and your interest and passion for this program. So I'm going to pass it back over to Kate, but just before, feel free to use the Q&A function of Zoom to start asking some questions, or if you have questions, and at the end, we're going to answer those questions live for you.
Great.
And with that, I'll pass it over. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Thanks, Matt. And thanks for encouraging everyone to use the Q&A function as well. As we go along, type those questions early, and then yeah, we'll get to them at the end. So let's dive into transcripts. What are we going to be looking for, and what do we need you to upload? So we are going to be asking for transcripts from each degree granting institution. So this is going to be from likely your undergrad as well as your MBA program. If you did an exchange somewhere, we would like to see a transcript from there. We want to see grades from every class that you've done in your academic journey. And really what we're looking for in those transcripts is we're trying to gauge potential for academic success in our program. How have you done previously, and how will you do hopefully in our rigorous program? Does that translate into success here? And we're trying really to look beyond that GPA. So GPA is obviously important, but it doesn't reflect everything. And so we're also looking at your quant performance, your grades. It's really a combination of each. Like Matt said earlier, when we're doing the holistic approach, your test scores plus your transcript together are really evidence that we need to evaluate your ability to not only survive, but thrive in the classroom. And so we're combining both. Maybe you have a low test score, but you have high grades. Maybe you have low grades, but a high test score, right? And so it's a nice combination of both and being able to look at a full package. We do ask you to include transcript from your MBA program, even if you're in progress. So say you just started your MBA program this past September, the round one deadline's in January, and you don't have your first term grades. You can still apply right now. You can put a note in your application letting us know when we'll get your grades, because we will want to see those when they come out, as well as maybe a list of courses that you're taking, just something for us to look at that time if you don't have MBA grades. We also are looking for course titles and grades from all of the courses that you've taken, both MBA and undergraduate. Right now, we only need unofficial transcripts. You do not need to give us official transcripts. If you are admitted and enroll, you will be asked to provide official transcripts for enrollment. But at this point, we'll take unofficial, scanned copies, whatever you can get to show us what you have in the application itself. And then lastly, just make sure you translate and notarize all non-English transcripts. So we do need to see those course names in English so we can understand what courses you took and be able to look at the corresponding grades. And I would say when it comes to grades, try and upload a scale. You do not need to have them converted to the US system. We do understand that all countries have different grading systems, and through the years we know how to look at those, but it always helps to have a scale just as we're looking through the transcripts. So next, let's talk about test scores. I touched on this a little bit just a second ago, saying that we really combine both test scores and transcripts for overall evidence of your success. So the GMAT or GRE test score is required. So that could be the old GMAT, that could be the new GMAT Focus, as well as the GRE. I know there's an online score, testing score now. We don't accept the executive assessment. It's only the GMAT or GRE. If you have not taken that exam for your MBA program, there's still plenty of time to do so. You don't have to do it for the January deadline, because we do have deadlines in February and again in April. So there's plenty of time. And what I'd like to say a little bit more about the test scores is, again, utilizing this opportunity to show us really that you're equipped to succeed in our curriculum and really be able to thrive here, like I mentioned, providing us with a snapshot of your skill set and abilities. I know test scores aren't necessarily always indicative of everything. And so that's why the holistic approach is really important for us. There is no minimum test score. One piece of advice I would like to give applicants, if you think your test score is low and it's hindering from you from applying, don't let it hinder you from applying. Apply anyways. We can talk through a test score. There is a chance for you to maybe retake the test. Maybe it is more competitive than you think it is. So don't feel like your test score isn't good enough. It may be. We just don't, you don't know. So apply first. That's my best advice, and then we'll find out. With that, I'll pass it back to Matt, who's going to dive into the resume portion.
Thanks. So let's talk about your resume and what we're looking for. So a snapshot into sort of your professional experience, what you've done so far. So I know some people have a little bit more experience, some people less. I believe our average work experience for this year's class was about 7 years. And that's the average. That's not, the minimum or anything like that. So what we like to see is about 1 to 2 pages maximum in length. And you can include all of your work experience to date. We want to see what you've done, and when you're talking about it, give us some bullet points of the different things that you've done, the achievements you've had, what tasks maybe you were given. We want to know what you did more than just, I was an intern, or, I was the CFO and that's it. Give us a little bit more to it. With that, we also want to really get to see this page come to life. And we want to get to know what you've done recently. Make sure that your resume is similar to how you would apply for a job. It's tailored a little bit more, it's updated to, send to us. It's not just your everyday resume that you're going to send off 1,000 times. Make sure that, as you would with anything, it's tailored. One of the other key pieces, make sure that you're able to include proof of employment. We're going to be reviewing sort of all of your jobs, but we're only able to review the ones that you provide us proof for. And this can be pay stubs, a letter from HR. This could be sort of an internship or work certificate, things like that that are going to allow us to sort of validate this and just allow us to review it. And again, this will also help too to have kind of handy, because we do have a background verification once admitted, and they're going to request to reach out. And if there's any questions or anything like that, being able to provide this proof definitely makes life a little bit easier. And then make sure that your resume and the work that you put in your application, and also the stuff that you provide us for proof of employment, all kind of match up. If you were an intern, please don't put down that, you were a data analyst or something more than that. Because when we look at your proof of employment and it says intern and that's it, we're going to have questions, or we're going to look at that and wonder, what are we missing? So definitely make sure that, the dates, the, proof of employment, everything matches up. And as I mentioned, make sure that with the proof of employment, list organizations that you worked for. You can upload the documents however you'd like. I know some people, it definitely can make it easier if you're able to upload maybe the documents along with sort of a single page that kind of says, here is what each page is. It makes it a little bit quicker and easier to kind of disseminate what it is. Please make sure, if possible, that it's translated into English. If you can get us the English translation, we really like to see that. It makes it a lot easier to review. Do not list informal, unpaid part-time work. You can put that under, another like additional experience if you want, but don't put that under work experience, especially if you were hired through a third party. So, for example, let's say, I was working for Kate and Kate was working for Yale. I didn't work for Yale. I worked for Kate. And you'd want to make sure that you put down that you worked for Kate, because when we go to ask Yale, hey, did Matt work there? They're going to look and say, well, no, we don't have any, verification or any documentation that he was there. So keep that in mind. As I mentioned, do not include that work for individuals, only organizations. And then, as I mentioned, proof of employment, contracts, pay slips, letter from human resources, tax documents. If you have questions, or let's say you're, an entrepreneur and you're wondering what documents, definitely feel free to reach out to us. Usually, a letter of incorporation or LLC documents, things like that, that can kind of go to show that this was more than just, an idea or something that maybe you sold something on Instagram a few times and you're adding that. give us a little bit more there, or reach out if you have questions about a specific instance. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Kate.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Okay, so let's dive into recommendations. We are going to be asking for 2 recommendation letters for the MAM program. And so let's talk a little bit about what those 2 are. First is going to be professional recommendation. So this could be from a current or previous supervisor, and it can be anyone who you choose, but really we're looking for someone who can talk about your strengths, your professional potential, and maybe some success stories that you've had previously. So make sure you choose a reference who can really speak to who you are, your performance, and your potential. I think titles are less important to us. It doesn't have to be the CEO, or it doesn't have to be the dean or whoever it may be. Choose someone who knows you well, who worked with you, who can really talk about your character. That's what we want to hear. It's all well and great that the CEO thinks you're wonderful, but if they didn't interact with you, that doesn't really provide us much in the recommendation letter. Or maybe you did interact with the CEO. That's wonderful if you did. Obviously, that's fine to submit. My point is just pick someone who can really speak to you. Piece of advice, just request that in advance. Your recommenders are busy, they're working professionals, and so they don't have a lot of time to maybe write a recommendation for you off cuff. So give them time in advance to be able to write this letter. I think it's important, if you can, to meet with them in person, maybe take them out for coffee or lunch if they have the availability, to talk more about them, reconnect, or about you, to reconnect with them, to maybe talk about some of your successes that they can represent in that letter. If that's not an option, that's okay. Hop on a phone call with them and chat with them. My point here is just give them time, give them some information as well to talk about. They're busy people. This application must be submitted.
Oh, I think Kate might have frozen. So just keep in mind that the recommendations do need to be submitted by the application deadline. Oh, I think Kate's back. I'll let her take back
Oh,
over.
I'm so sorry, Matt. My Zoom must have froze. I'm so sorry, everyone. I've been
Oh, I think it froze again. Um, her Zoom has been freezing a little bit. Apologies. But yeah, so they must be submitted by the deadline for review. So make sure that you're staying ahead of this. You reach out to your dean or director or the professional reference ahead of time to ask them to get that submitted. Make sure that you stay in contact with them. We will reach out to you if we're missing anything or if there are any issues, but definitely make sure that you reach out to them ahead of time. And again, please make sure they send it from their professional source. I'll let Kate take back over in case she has anything to add on that.
Thanks a lot, Matt. And sorry, everyone. My Zoom has been a little finicky this morning. The only thing I just wanted to add is that if your professional recommender asks you to write their recommendation for you, don't do that. Do not write your own recommendation. Find a different recommender. If they just don't have the time, that's okay. But don't write this for yourself, and don't let them have any opinion about that. So let's quickly talk about the dean or director letter too. So with that, just check in with your MBA office, ask who that might be and the correct person. It might be the dean of your MBA, it might be the director of your MBA. Sometimes we know who that is too, so you can email us and we can always help guide you in the right direction. The idea behind the dean or director letter really is a letter of support, showing that you were a good student at your MBA school, less so about personal accomplishments you've had and more so how you were as a student in the student body. So thanks a lot for that help, Matt. Okay, let's talk about essays. We're going to talk one at a time because there's a lot, or not a lot, but there's a lot of words, right? So there's 3 essays. Our first essay you can see up here is really talking about our mission and your connection with our mission, as well as your connection with our program, how it complements your MBA, why you need the MAM, and again, combining that with our mission to educate leaders for business and society. So I think here, do some reflection on why you're applying to the MAM. Why is it the right time right now? Why do you need to build off of your MBA? How is the MAM going to help you do that? Utilize this opportunity to really connect the dots between your MBA, the MAM, our mission, and your future. I'm asking you all these questions because I think it helps create the answer when you ask yourself all these things. And as you create those answers to those questions, you can kind of combine them to make the essay. Essay number two is focused, yes, on excellence. We want to know what excellence means to you, how you've, displayed it, and how you'll display it in the future, but less so about the correct answer, right? Excellence can come in many terms, and everyone has a different opinion about what that means. And so there's no right answer there. But what we do want to look for is you being able to tell us more about how you connect again with our school and the future and your goals as well in the future. Don't use this essay to showcase all of your accomplishments and reiterate your resume. Please don't do that. We've read your resume. We can see you've done such amazing things. And yes, you can mention them in this essay, but really this is a reflection of yourself now and where you see yourself in the future. And then essay three really comes back to your goals. And I think your goals probably will be trickled throughout all the essays, right? Because the MAM relates to your goals and why you're doing the MAM program. But tell us about your passions, where you see yourself. How can the MAM help you get these goals? Why do you need the MAM to get to these goals? Right? Those are the questions you should be asking yourself as you write this essay, and then putting them in here to tell us what you're going to do to get there and how we can do it. Overall, the essays are used to help us understand your communication, your writing style, how you put thought into a question, and how you answer it. I'm going to just provide a couple more pieces of, I think, advice here or tips overall. Proofread, proofread. Spell check does not check everything, I promise you. Students have accidentally uploaded essays with track changes before. Students have accidentally uploaded, essays with that weren't finished because they were still, mocking them up. So just proofread, reread them. I think too, go back, answer the question, ask the question to yourself again, make sure you answered it. That is my best advice. Answer the questions. Don't just go off on a tangent talking about things. Answer what we're asking in those essays. That's what we're looking for. Last bit, maybe show your essays to a friend, have them guess what the question is. And if they can read your essay, guess the question, you've done it right. So maybe work backwards. Now I'll pass it over to Matt to talk about the last key components of our application and interview process before we have a chance to answer your questions live.
Thanks, Kate. So the optional information. So I want to talk about, this is sort of the quote unquote fourth essay, if you will, and it is optional. It's not something that you have to do. And quite frankly, we don't think everyone should do it. This essay is to focus on clarity. If there is something in your application that you think if they see this, they may have questions or they may want to know more about it. Maybe you had a bad grade. Maybe there's a gap in your resume. Maybe, there's something there that, we would look at or we would notice and kind of think, what's that about? Or what happened there? This is exactly what this essay is for. This essay is not meant to be something where you tell us how much you love Yale, how much you want the program, what this would mean to you, nothing like that. When you do that, it actually is not beneficial for you. We'll put that out there. This is supposed to be something to help clarify and cover anything that we may see. And it's a great opportunity to say, hey, I recognize that, maybe this class didn't go as well as it should have. I, didn't study and I was a freshman in college and realized, I need to study and, actually focus a little bit more. I made sure that I set aside time, every week to study and do this and this. And as you can see on the rest of my resume, my grades improved and I had no more issues. That's exactly what it's there for. It's to say, I recognize this. Here's what happened. Here's how I, took steps to fix the problem or, not have this happen again. And you can see here now that everything, is on the right path. That's perfect. It doesn't need to be anything crazy long either. It can be short, sweet, and to the point. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of what our optional essay is meant for. One of the other big things that we have is video questions. And I want to take a minute to kind of talk about this because I think this is one piece that a lot of people get nervous about or seem to have the most questions about, I would say. So once you've paid the application fee, within usually 24 to 48 hours, you're going to be sent a link to do 3 video questions. You'll answer all of them in one sitting. There's no breaks, no retakes. Basically, a question will pop up, and I believe it's asked by myself or my colleague Evelyn. And you'll get that question. You'll have between 60 seconds and 90 seconds to think about your answer or your response. And then camera goes on, and you'll have 60 seconds to 90 seconds to respond to those three questions. You really don't need to prepare anything. This is something where we want to see how you think on your feet, how you sort of react and answer. I would recommend, have a notepad next to you because I think it's, always great. The way that personally I look at this is think of it as though it were, an essay. You're learning how to write an essay back in, I don't know, elementary school, middle school. There's 5 pieces. You have your introduction, your 3 body paragraphs, and your conclusion. Think of it that way. You have your, opening sentence, you have your 3 main points and or give or take, and then, you conclude it. That's perfect. It doesn't need to be anything crazy or overthought. And a lot of these questions, quite honestly, I think are kind of fun to answer because we want to get to know you better. This is an opportunity to really showcase who you are, what you're about. Please don't sit there and just read the whole time. If you're reading off of something, we're going to see that, we're going to know, and it's not great. Now, if you're looking over at some notes and you're kind of, saying, oh, yep, this was my second bullet point, and you come back and talk to us, that's perfect. One other key piece to this, if you stumble, if you have a moment where you kind of all of a sudden get lost, take a second, compose yourself, and finish strong. You finishing strong and not, panicking or having that moment is going to show a lot about you and, that ability to come back when, things get tough. So definitely, no preparations needed. Don't stress. Have fun with this. This is a great opportunity to really showcase who you are and, a little bit more about yourself. And then interviews, the other fun piece that a lot of people have questions about. So interviews are by invitation only. They're done over Zoom, and usually they're about 30 minutes long. As you can see, usually about 2 to 3 weeks after that deadline is when invitations will start going out. And what we really try to do is dig deeper into aspects of your application that we may have. So when we go to our committee and discuss everything, we want to get those questions answered. We want to be able to talk about, hey, that grade or, that we're wondering about this internship and, what did you learn during that internship? Those are the types of things that we're going to learn more about, hopefully, in this interview. But also, again, we want to learn more about you. Who are you? What are you about? Why do you want this program? Hopefully, you've done a good job on your essays. So hopefully it's a little bit of just taking that information and putting a face to it and getting to talk a little bit more about that. But we really want to use these to get to know more about you, get questions answered, and really, find out why do you want this program and hopefully that you have a bit of a, pathway in mind. I can tell you, think about your goals, think about why you want this program. It's really, if you can, if you understand what the mission is, if you, connect to that mission, if you know how Yale can help you, and I recommend certainly taking time to review our course list, talk to some students, admissions ambassadors are happy to connect with you, talk to some alumni even. All of those questions are going to get answered. You're going to be able to put together and say, hey, I know, I'm at point A. Point C is where I want to be. Yale is point B. Okay, what is point B though? Or what is the pathway that I'm seeing that connects the two? And it's really going to become clear how Yale can help you and what we can do. And then hopefully that translates to your essays. And then when it comes time to interview, it's a couple questions, but a really great opportunity to have a conversation and just get to know who you are a little bit better. So we're going to take some time now for our Q&A session. So feel free to use the Q&A button and share any of your questions. We'll also try and answer some of the questions that some of you submitted prior to our session today.
Great. Matt, I'll be happy to take the first question. So someone has asked if there's absolutely no scope for those who want to apply in round one who aren't GNAM. So Matt did mention the first round in January is only open to Global Network for advanced management students. However, if you're applying from a non-Global Network school, you can still submit in round one. You just won't have an answer until round two. So there may be a chance where we can review you early and can do some communication with you, but you won't be having a decision until with round two. So that being said, you can absolutely, anyone can open their application now, anyone can submit now. And so we can talk more specifically about your case.
Definitely. I'm seeing two quick questions here that I want to cover. So, I don't believe we're going to share this PowerPoint, but we'll share a recording of this entire webinar with you. So you'll be able to go back and check out all of the slides again. So hopefully that'll be helpful. And then proof of employment does need to be submitted at the time of application. Like I said, it doesn't have to be super in-depth, but contract, internship certificate, pay stubs, something to show that you did in fact do this job or did work where you said you work. The background verification is going to go a little bit more in depth, and they're going to reach out to past employers and all of that. But it's good to have that stuff handy because oftentimes we do find that even our background verification team will reach out and there's something there that they need a little bit of clarity on, or sometimes the company is not as responsive. And in that case, it's great to have that documentation to be able to just send right over, and then you don't have to stress about it. The other component to this that I do want to mention, anything that doesn't have proof of employment or some sort of proof with it, we can't evaluate because we don't know, how to judge it. So just keep that in mind.
Great. Thanks, Matt. We have a student who is asking, so this is from Melissa. Melissa, thank you for answering a question. She's from SNU, which is part of GNAM, and just asking. So we do have a dual degree program with SNU. We also have a dual degree program with some other schools in the global network. And so what that allows is for students to essentially finish their MBA program with us. So start their MBA program at their MBA and then use the electives during the MBA program to transfer back to their MBA program and graduate with both the MBA and MAM program at the end of these two. So that being said, Melissa, to your question, if it would be better to apply as part of the dual degree or a separate application, afterwards, it does not matter. There's no advantage to either, whether you apply as a dual degree candidate, as a current student, or even as an alum. We accept, students, graduates from any kind of timeline, and so there's no advantage in any which way. So apply when you're ready and you feel like you can put the strongest application together, as Matt had mentioned earlier.
And then to add to that, because I saw a little bit of a question, and I know it always comes up, and I think Kate covered it, but the GMAT GRE, it's not optional. There's no waiver for it. It is a requirement. If you had a GMAT score or a GRE score that is now expired, but you used it to get into your MBA program, we are able to use those scores still. So keep that in mind. The bigger question that everyone asks, what is sort of the minimum, or what is the score I have to have? And it's a good question. Because the program is a bit younger, we don't have enough data to really give a solid answer, one. But two, we also don't want to dissuade anybody from applying to the program. If your test score is super high, maybe your GPA is a little bit lower. If your GPA is really high and your test score is a little bit lower, that's okay. But also apply with your best test score. If you put together a fantastic application, again, we're looking at every component of it. We're going to look at the essays. We're going to look at, the video questions. We're going to review your resume. All of those pieces are going to come into play at some point. Just because you got a perfect GMAT or GRE score and have a perfect GPA doesn't mean that you're going to be admitted. So I want to make sure it's very clear, there is no minimum score that you need to get. Put together your best application overall, and that's going to be your best opportunity to be admitted.
Great advice, Matt. And this kind of goes along with it, along with a question and what you just said, right? The student has asked if maybe they have a below average GPA and below average GRE score. Can they still be an ideal candidate with other different qualities and accomplishments? And to that question, it's yes, absolutely. And that goes back to us being able to look at an application holistically. Look at, where you see yourself, your current past, how your employment was. Connecting the dots is super important. So maybe you didn't perform super well in your GRE and your previous, schools. The optional essay is a great part to talk about that, why you feel that is. Something we will be paying attention to, like I said, is your potential success in our program because it is rigorous. So maybe you didn't do so well in the past. We're going to look at what kind of courses you're going to be taking here too, and how does that translate. So maybe you did terrible in your quant classes in the past, and you're coming here and you're going to take the management science major. That could be a red flag for us. We don't feel like you'll maybe succeed as much in our quant classes if you haven't in the past. And so we're not really able to connect those dots. So don't leave any questions for us open in the application. And back to your point, yes, you can absolutely apply and potentially get in.
So I'm seeing a question here about when does the program start? And that's a great question. So just to give you a little bit of a timeline. So the program begins mid-August, I believe this upcoming year, and I might be mistaken. It's either August 11th or August 12th is when orientation starts. You'll go through a 2-week orientation, and then usually there's a short period between that orientation and classes beginning. I believe this year classes started on the 27th, if I'm not mistaken, which was, I think, a Wednesday. Um, but classes will begin, and then you'll kind of jump into the term. The way that I guess, full year breaks down, there are fall term and spring term, and then within that you have fall 1, fall 2, spring 1, spring 2. So there's a couple breaks in between. There's opportunities to maybe do a global network experience, different things like that. But usually it starts in, I would say, mid-August, and then it runs through about mid-May. But I can tell you right now, our students are in exam time. They're very busy, but definitely keep that in mind if you're looking at the program and thinking about sort of when the start date might be. And orientation is mandatory. I should also mention that.
Thanks, Matt. The start date this year is August 11th. So you must be on campus for that date. So please plan accordingly. If you don't technically graduate by that date, because I know some schools don't, there is some finagling. So reach out to us. We do work with the MBA programs to figure out how to get you on campus, also how to get you graduated. And so don't be deterred by that date either. We can figure out how to get you on campus for that date, but you do have to be here for August 11th. There's a question in here, which I think is good. As a reapplicant, we have someone who would like to reapply who did not get in last year. We absolutely encourage reapplicants. I think having a year to reflect on maybe, why you didn't get in, what has changed, being able to just kind of, fluff up some of the other stuff that rose from last year and really enhance, your application this year. So yes, and we have had students get in who reapply too. They've had a year to reflect, to think more about what they want to do, to have more concise plans of where they see their future, and then also sometimes just have some grades from their MBA. So yes, please reapply this year if you're interested.
I'm seeing a question, or a couple questions about recommendation letters. And one of them in particular is asking about, who should it be? Should it be a post-MBA employer? Could it be a pre-MBA? So I think, you don't want it to be so far back, but again, pick someone, as Kate mentioned, that is going to be able to speak to, working with you and what you are like as an employee or as someone that they've worked with. What is their experience like? Make sure that, they're able to really go in depth and share a lot of great things about you, and talk highly of you. Again, it could be someone that, maybe you just started a new job in the last year, and maybe it's the employer from 2, 3 years ago. That's totally fine. Just make sure it's someone that can speak to, working with you, what you're about, what you're like, speak to maybe some accomplishments. We always love to see that kind of information. But definitely there is no, I would say there's no good or bad direction to go there. Just pick someone that knows you best. And then I saw one as well, that was kind of asking about someone from their MBA or talking about grades. I would say in that case, any recommendations that you want us to review, make sure that they're submitted prior to the deadline, but they do need to be submitted to our team. If, and I also want to put a little note here, if you do see that there's any issues or if your recommender is having any issues submitting stuff, let us know, have your recommender reach out to us and we can try and work with them so that we can get your document or your recommendation letter in hand and added to your profile before the deadline. So just, yeah, sure you note that.
Great. We have two questions last, and please feel free to keep asking, but I think these go hand in hand because they talk about proof of employment. So one is just saying they started their MBA internship recently. Does a contract work for proof of employment? And the answer is yes. As long as it's from the company, has the company's letterhead, has your name, their name, whether that's a contract, a pay stub, whatever it may be, it will absolutely work. So yes, please upload that. And then second question along with that is that they don't have a fully English notarized document for their employment contract. That's okay. Well, we would love to have an English notarized version. If you can't provide that fully for the full employment contract, that's okay. Please don't burn yourself out trying to make that happen. There are ways for us to, translate it. It's just a preferred method if possible. Okay, so we have a question about orientation and it being August 11th and their graduation being after the start of classes, asking if they can miss a few days of orientation. Would this affect my enrollment process? So you cannot miss orientation. Orientation is mandatory and it will affect your enrollment process. So there are cases where, yes, you can go back to your MBA and attend graduation. We've had students do that. So what I would really suggest is talking to us one-on-one about what school you come from so we can work with that school and we can work with our academic affairs and student life office to make that work. We don't want you to miss out on your MBA graduation because you need to be here for mandatory orientation. However, orientation is mandatory in order to enroll, and it does start a little earlier than people anticipate. So my best advice to this anonymous attendee, please reach out to us on our email so we can talk more and we'll figure it out for you. Again, we're not trying to hinder anyone from, attending anything. It's really just about being here on time.
I'm seeing another question about employment. Let me just read it quick. So if you have experience, I would say it doesn't matter if it's a cash job or however they pay you. The key piece there would be make sure that you have proof of employment or you have some sort of documentation for it. So if you have a contract, a certificate, something like that to be able to kind of prove it. I would say that's sort of the key piece. For unpaid internships, you can certainly list them. Okay, would that fall under additional experience or?
I'd say if you have unpaid internships, I would probably list those on your resume as additional experience and less so as work experience because they weren't paid. Because you are gaining relevant experience. It's just not formally paid. And so we want to make sure we differentiate the two. Secondly, to Matt's point earlier, is you will be going through a verification process. So if you put unpaid internships, that could kick back and be not so great for you if an employer can't verify your employment. So just, be wary of that.
And I'm seeing a follow-up about listing these employments. Can I list these employments that are not available for verification? So I would say, you don't have to exclude them, but as mentioned, I would say put them under sort of additional experience or something to that effect. Under the work experience or sort of that like official work experience section. I would say list the ones that you can provide proof for because when we go through that verification process, that's going to be something that they're going to look at and go through. And if they're having trouble with that, that could present issues.
Great. I saw another good question. So we have a student who has two masters already. So they have a specialized master and then their MBA. Do we accept candidates with two masters? Absolutely. The only eligibility requirement is that you have an MBA. So everyone has a different academic journey. Some students have different kinds of undergrads. They have multiple masters. They have law degrees. It just depends. So yes, we're not discouraging anyone from applying. You just have to have an MBA.
All right, I'm seeing a question about sort of the job prospects and some of that information. So this is actually a great question, and I'll kind of go at it from two angles. So one, there are, first things first, don't do this program with the intention of getting a job in the US. We cannot make any promises that you're going to get a job in the US. We don't promise that. We want to make that very clear up front. If you want to do that, that's fantastic. That can be your plan A, but make sure you've got a plan B, plan C. Make sure you have options for sort of a job afterwards. Now, the key piece that I want to talk about is, if you're admitted, what's the sort of the process for, that next step of looking for a job. So it actually starts in usually late June or July that our career development office will start reaching out. They're going to have workshops throughout the summer that are building your resume, creating your story or crafting your story, talking about cover letters, where's the best places to recruit. All of those sorts of things, they're going to be hosting webinars throughout the summer so that when you get here, they can talk a little bit further about the recruitment process during orientation. And then you're going to kind of hit the ground running and start that recruiting process. If you're not doing things during the summer and you're not being proactive, it's going to set you up for a a little bit of a painful start because you're going to be very busy. The students that I've talked to that said, oh, I was on webinars and I did this and that over the summer. When they got here, they were able to start recruiting. They, might have had one or two one-on-one sessions with someone in the career development office and then hit the ground running. The students that didn't do that and kind of waited until they got here to get started, now you're trying to start classes, join clubs, meet people, and make friends while also trying to do your resume, do your cover letter, catch up on all those things, and then start recruiting. So it puts you at a little bit of a disadvantage. So start early. And then our career development office absolutely works with students. Go and talk to them. Once you're on campus, start meeting with them. Have, one-on-one sessions, go to their workshops that they host. In our normal info sessions, we talk a lot more about sort of those sessions and we share a little bit about what your schedule might look like. Fridays are usually a day without classes for students, and they're focused on those recruiting opportunities. I can tell you, we have students, we actually just found out from one of our students that she was offered a position very recently. So some students are able to kind of find jobs a little bit earlier. I remember talking with a few students, and sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's a little bit closer to the end of the school year. It just depends from student to student, but they have a lot of resources in the career development office that are available. Take advantage of those. One other thing that I'm going to hint at, check out our podcast. We just released the podcast, MAM Admissions Unplugged, where we talk a little bit more about some of this stuff. We talk with some alumni and some students about these things. And we're going to have some more episodes that will hopefully relate to this coming out in the not too distant future, that'll kind of share some more information about the resources and opportunities with our career development office.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Someone just wrote to ask if companies come to campus to meet with MAM students, and the answer is yes. Recruiters do come on campus to have coffee chats with students. The CDO does bring companies on campus to do different panels as well on Fridays, and so lots of opportunities to meet companies here on campus and then potentially go visit theirs too. We are pretty close to New York and Boston, only a train ride away either which way. And so there might be a chance where you can go and actually talk to employers and their companies too, if you're recruiting in either of those areas. And then we have another question, I think our last one so far. We're getting close to the end of our webinar, regarding professional experience and where to put it. I do understand how people have a lot of questions around this, especially because of proof of employment as well. And then this person is also asking if they should gain a little bit more experience before they come to the program. So I think everyone's situation is different. Some students, it does make sense to have some more experience before they come to the MAM program so they can better align what they're going to do with their career goals. I think if you're still exploring career goals, maybe it does make sense to get a little more work before you come here and before they're solidified. On the other hand, it may make sense to come here and explore a little more before they are solidified. So I think everyone's story is a little bit different. So I don't want to give any advice as to whether someone should go get more work experience or not, because everyone's journey is different and everyone's telling their story in a different way. So tell your story. If it makes sense right now and only you know if it does, then your story will be able to tell that to us. So I hope that helps.
And one thing to add to that, I would say, um, think about why you want the program or what you need. Is there something that you feel like you're missing in your career or in your tool belt, if you will? We have a lot of students that they've done business, they've focused on business. The MBA was all about business, but they want to do business and sustainability or business and politics or something to that effect. Well, you can come here and take courses at the School of the Environment or Jackson School for Global Affairs. Maybe you want to, you see the developments in AI and you want to learn more about AI and technology. You can come here and take those courses and learn that. If you're just doing it for the Yale brand, quite honestly, I don't know if you're going to be able to put together the best application because you're not going to be able to dive into those topics and those things that, hey, this is what I need so that I can take that next step or so that, I can be successful in my career. If you have those, and I hate to say gaps, but if there are those gaps, then you can kind of start explaining, hey, I saw these courses, these clubs, these things that are going to help me develop the skills necessary to not have those gaps anymore and continue being successful.
I'll put Matt.
Let's see.
Great. I think those are all of our questions, Matt. We only have about 5 minutes left.
Let's
If we didn't answer your questions, please email us at advanced.management@yale.edu. We'd be happy to answer those. Oh, my favorite part. Matt and I are going to give a final piece of advice. I know we've given advice along the way, but maybe an overarching piece. So, Matt, do you have something you'd like to share with everyone?
I do. So I would say my final piece of advice would be plan ahead. I think we've talked about it a few different times for a few different things. The deadlines will sneak up on you, similar to how our students feel right now. It is now December and their first term at Yale is, over. They have one term left. Similar to this, December is halfway over. Round one deadline is, I think, about 3 weeks, a little bit under 4 weeks away. Make sure that you've reached out to those recommenders. Make sure that you've taken the time to review your essays and gone over everything. Really make sure you do your due diligence, you've planned ahead, and that way you're not scrambling at the last minute. Again, we've had people submit at 11:59 of round three and get in. I can tell you they were very stressed out, and it's not the most fun thing in the world. You can absolutely get admitted, but try not to do that. If you can plan ahead and get everything in, it's going to make, it's going to put a lot of ease on your mind. How about you, Kate?
Um, I think this is a piece of advice I typically give because I think it matters, not matters the most to me, but it matters a lot to me. So my best piece of advice is to be authentic. Be yourself, be true to yourself. This is an opportunity for you to really showcase yourself. I know that some students get bogged down on getting perfect grades, perfect internships, perfect everything. And while that's wonderful and you deserve all the accolades for, those perfect accomplishments, tell us who you are. I really want to know who you are as a person. And so it's great to be prepared, but stay true to who you are throughout. Do not tell us what you think we want to hear. Don't regurgitate our website, our webinars, our brochures. Talk from your heart. I think that is the best way for us to really see you connecting with our program, our school, and how you fit in here with our program. And only by being authentic can you really tell us why the MAM program makes sense to you. So yeah, be yourself. I know we mentioned this earlier, Matt. Thank you for the plug on the admissions podcast. Please listen to our admissions podcast. We spent a lot of time on that, and we're going to be dropping some new episodes, I think mid to late January. So we're going to drop about 5, 6 new episodes. So if you haven't caught up, listen to what we have so far, and then you can be caught up to listen again in January. Also, join us for one of our upcoming events. Our App Tips webinar is a great webinar if you're planning to apply because it really dives into each component, but we also have some other good webinars. We have a student panel webinar coming up in January where Camino is actually going to be talking with 3 of our current students. So you can find out what they've been doing at Yale. We also have some Q&As. Those happen monthly, so please join us for those. And then lastly, email us at advanced.management@yale.edu. We would be happy to talk with you over email and answer any of your specific questions that we didn't get to today, or any specifics to your case. Happy to talk with you more. Just want to thank everyone so much for being here with Matt and I today. Thank you, Matt, for hosting this webinar with me. And also thank you, Elena, on the back end, our colleague who's been helping us make this webinar happen.